Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our Autism Advice Line Plus sessions. We are super delighted to welcome back Peter Vermeulen. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
It's a pleasure again.
It's good to see you. So we thought today that we would have a bit of a discussion around coping with uncertainty. And Peter has written a really fabulous piece for us that's on our website, and our social media team will make sure that that's signposted on this event. But a really great piece on sort of coping with uncertainty, particularly now that things have started to sort of open up again, and our own individual normal, if you like, is starting to return to us. Children are going back to school, employers are starting to open up again. But obviously that throws up a lot of sort of, what ifs and what should I do kind of thing. And your piece is really great at sort of pulling some of those out, Peter, particularly around, some of those questions that people might have around uncertainty.
Yeah, the thing is that uncertainty has been part of our life forever. We have coped pretty well with uncertainty, but well, in March, suddenly there was a big uncertainty because there was something that we did not know. Actually, we're facing not only a little bit more uncertainties now, but the uncertainties are even thrown more into our face now, because every day we see the numbers of the new infections, we hear about the new measures, we hear about the difficulties people have following the rules and so on. And all these uncertainties, before we were not facing the uncertainties on the news every day. There was not every day on the news how many people died in Scotland. There was not on the news every day things about schools that might have to close or maybe reopened because a teacher was sick. That wasn't in the news. Teachers were sick then too, and children too. And now it's thrown in our face, and the brain doesn't like that, because the thing is that the brain hates unpredictability and uncertainty, for the simple reason that the brain's task is to predict the world so that we are prepared to survive in the world. And now suddenly this brain is confronted with a lot of question marks that it doesn't like. Good thing is, though, that since we have been coping with uncertainties before, okay, maybe not as much as now, but our brain is able to cope with uncertainty. So that's the good news. We can all cope with it, but maybe we have to learn it now more consciously. And especially now, because in the beginning of the lockdown, it was easier because, okay, we were suddenly faced with an enemy, but there was a simple rule. You stay in your house and you don't go out. So, and it was this gonna take a while, and this is a simple rule. So there were a lot of certainties. You couldn't go to the shop because the shops were not open, well, except the ones for food. But now with being the measures being more relaxed now, especially with the flexibility that maybe certain regions will have other rules than other regions, or some schools will maybe have different rules than other schools, and children from the same family will have to do different things. That makes it complicated and very stressful for the brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is. It's that I know what the rules are today, and I knew what they were yesterday, and I can develop my own sort of coping strategies and my own plan for dealing with those rules and the requirements on me. And we talked about in our last conversation around sort of how to be your own coach, around the fact that you can take sort of ownership of yourself. You can't control the actions of others. You can just sort of do what you feel is right. And for most of us, we want to be good citizens and follow the rules that the Scottish Government lays out for us. But there is that element of, well, I don't know what tomorrow is going to do, because even if we take the example today, and those, an awful lot of uncertainty that's now arisen for a number of autistic children and their families around the update to the rule regarding face coverings for the over 12s. Now, that group of individuals, if it's the same exemption applies for them in terms of if it is too difficult to wear a face covering, if it is too distressing for you, then you do not have to wear one at school. But yesterday that rule wasn't there, and today it is, and that's quite a short time frame to sort of cope with that.
Well, the thing is with the uncertainty is that actually we are now suddenly we get all these rules and certainly we get the uncertainties in a very fast way, each after each other. Before, the uncertainties were like more dosed over time, and now everything goes very quickly, and it can change very quickly. However, uncertainty is always about the future. And one of the first things that can help to cope with uncertainty is to accept that you cannot predict the future. How hard that is, but letting go and accepting, okay, I can't predict the future, because the thing is with uncertainty is that it leads to worrying, and thinking about a future you don't know is not necessarily worrying. And what we cannot avoid the uncertainty, but what we can try to do is not to suffer too much from our ideas about the future, because what a lot of people now do is that there's reasons to be frustrated now, and that's okay because certain rules are stupid or are not clear enough. But the uncertainty about the future is often in absolute thinking and in negative thinking, and we don't know the outcome. The outcome could be positive as well. We don't actually know, but most people think about negative outcomes, or they focus on the negative things only. There's still a lot of positive things as well. Let's face it now. Okay, there's a lot of uncertainty about will the schools stay open, and will we not go back to a lockdown? But at least the schools are open again. Come on, let's face it. That's the good news. There's always good news and bad news. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So pushing the context button, that's one of my favorite phrases, Johan, that
It
context
is.
blindness. But nowadays, I think we should extend that also to parents, to teachers, to actually all of us. Let's push the context button and see context, because there's a lot of things that we don't like. There's a lot of things that we are afraid of. That's true. Let's not ignore it, but let's see it in the context of those things that are positive as well. And I think we should not assume also, one of the things that I hear in Belgium, I don't know how it is in Scotland, but schools reopen next week in Belgium now. And I hear all these teachers already saying, and all these kids will come to school with anxieties and worries. Well, many of them obviously will. But I know children who are so happy they can go back to school now, that they are willing. Some kids on the television, they were interviewed, and he said, if I have to wear face mask all day, but I can see my friends again, you know what? That's small a price. You see, let's focus also on the things that are certain and the things we do have. Now, I know that's easily said. To put it into practice, and that's why I talked in the article, and maybe we should focus on that in the Q&A as well. How, you will be worried anyway. We all are. We have our times that we think, oh, Jesus, this is so bad, and I'm so scared, and I'm so worried. But let's not let's become the manager of your worrying. As I said, become your own coach. You can also become the manager of your own worrying. It's okay to worry as long as you manage it. Don't let the worries take over from you. And you can, because it's your own brain. There's only one person who can become the manager of your brain, and it's you yourself.
Yeah. And I think I just we have a comment here from Elaine Bell saying that life during lockdown was much easier to cope with for my daughter. And as we discussed at the beginning of this discussion, life was much simpler. We stayed in our houses, and some of the sort of social pressures and the expectations of, even sometimes you can legitimately have your PJs on and you don't need to leave the house, and all those sorts of things do make life a little bit easier to deal with. But now we're back to some sort of normality. For example, going to school, everything is harder. And I suppose that is, as you said earlier, that we're used to sort of dealing with maybe one or two worries. And for some people, they'll be little worries, and for some people, they will be huge, big worries. Whereas now, the worries seem to keep coming all the time. You know, there's a constant sort of procession of worries. And I think for a lot of children going back to school, you know, will my school be the same as it was? Or I'm hearing maybe on the news that my school won't be the same as it was before. And, you know, there's not been an awful lot of time to sort of plan and prepare. And we've spoken a lot of, you know, you and I, around preparedness and how important that is for everybody, not only for autistic children. So I wonder if we can sort of talk about, and I suppose the question is around what can parents do to kind of help their children sort of deal with some of those worries? As you say, you know, just sort of saying, oh, well, we can think positively about, you know, well, we don't have this, but we do have this, but that is easier said than done. So what can parents do to kind of support their children with that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that both parents and teachers can do now. You know, one of the things that is typical for an autistic brain is that autistic people tend to see differences more than the similarities. That makes also that's the origin of their keen eye for detail also. So in many aspects that can be quite positive, but now in times of uncertainty, seeing the differences can lead to stress, because everybody talks about the new normal, and in an autistic brain that tends to think in absolute terms, it's like, oh, nothing that I knew before will be there. It's a new normal, so it will be completely different from before. So what parents and teachers can do is, and I would advise that, to put it as concrete and as visual as possible. So with some children, you take a piece of paper and you put a line there and say, okay, what's going to be different in school now? One of the things is that you will see face masks on people and other students and teachers, but there will be lessons. School without lessons is impossible. There will be free time. There will be teachers. There will be a principal. There will still be school rules. So there's a lot of things that will remain the same, and there's things that will be different. And that's again pushing the context button. The moment you can say, yes, okay, there's something that we don't know, or there's something that is going to be different in school, but this is going to be the same. You know, you're going to have to do your boring homework again. Oh, Jesus. That's going to be part of the new normal as well. Yeah, but let's be happy, because if we have homework, it means we are attending school and we are learning again. And the positive way, I would also say, there's now going to be a lot of changes in schools. I know that. I don't know how it is in Scotland, but here in Belgium, for instance, not all the kids can go out on the playground together anymore. They have to do it within their bubble. Do you have bubbles as well?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a famous new word, the bubble. To me, I only had bubbles in my champagne and my water before. Now we have human bubbles. But you know, that's different. But the thing is, involve the kids in the new measures. Don't let them come in the first day and say, look, here are the new rules. Let's say, okay, we're gonna have to do that in bubbles. Come on, class, let's find a fancy name for our bubble. So involve them and make them feel part of the new measures, because one of the things that is very difficult in times of uncertainty is that we kind of lose our feeling of control. We think that everything comes to us. We have no control whatsoever. So give these kids, how small as possible, how big as possible, but how small as you can to start with, give them some feeling of control. For instance, there will be hand sanitizers in schools.
Yeah, yes.
Well, let's do a competition. Who finds the most creative label for the hand sanitizer? Because now it's a cross and it looks very medical. In art class, let's develop fancy coverings for our hand gel sanitizer. Involve kids and do things that give them a sense of control, but also that you can say, look, this whole COVID thing, there's a lot of negative things, but come on, let's make it as positive as possible. Involve them. And that's what you can do at home as well. Another thing that parents and teachers can do is, let's not ignore, because I'm not ignoring the worries and anxieties over here, but plan it. Do not wait until children get so stressed that they kind of go down in an emotional lockdown and they block. Every time, take your time as a class, as a family, to worry about things and to say, what are we afraid of? What do we not know? And plan it, but then limit it. Take but take time for that. So schools now, I think the first couple of weeks, it's actually you and Carrie Ann who told me about the recovery curriculum. That's a wonderful idea. Put COVID-19 and the whole crisis and the uncertainty on the curriculum. Teach about, come on, kids, how are we going to survive this? And you focus also what can be done.
Yeah, I think it is as well. It's just sort of going back to your point around the sort of hand sanitizers. I think that's a really great idea, sort of getting them to sort of turn them into something that's comfortable in the space that they're in, whether that be a classroom or indeed at home. It also as well gives children a sense of ownership over that as well, because they've been responsible for sort of making sure that that's sitting where it should be, and it's got a bit more of a friendly label on it and things like that. And I think when you feel, as you say, you've been sort of part of it, in control of it, and you own a bit of it, it becomes slightly less of an uncertainty because you're part of it. And certainly we've spoken to a number of parents who've talked to their children or wanted to talk to their children about their worries, and maybe use things like worry boxes and things like that, where maybe the child has sort of written down what the worry is, or maybe mum or dad or a teacher has written it down, and then they'll have a conversation, and then it sort of gets posted in the box, and that's it. Sort of, well, it's in that box now, so we as you say, you don't want the worries to sort of start to overtake everything else, but still recognizing that to worry is okay. It's actually a really essential part of survival that we worry, and you touch on that in your piece around actually worries are not a bad thing. They actually do keep us safe from time to time.
Yeah, it's actually, when you're worried, it's your brain also trying to make a plan for the future to survive a possible threat. So actually worrying is healthy as long as they don't take over your worries. Yeah. So by putting them into a box is actually a good idea, because then you, especially for autistic children, you literally give something a place. Literally, you say, that's the place for our worries. What you could also do is say, every time we put a worry in there, we have our surprise good feeling box, and we take out the paper over there. Because the one thing that you can say, don't worry, but the nasty thing about worries is that even if you try to become a manager, they suddenly pop up. Suddenly you're worrying again. And telling children, try not to worry is an impossible, that's mission impossible. Try not to think about the pink elephant. Oops, so you think about the pink elephant. So if you tell children, try not to worry, they're going to actually worry more. So what is a better idea is, if they worry, take time, take place, give it a place, give it actually a time, make, if necessary, a worry chair, and say, then we sit there, and when we come off, we take. Distraction is important now. That's actually the biggest medicine against worrying is distraction. And distraction is something that you need to plan. Some people know this as flow activities.
Yeah.
Because distraction needs to be an activity that demands so much attention that you cannot worry at the same time. This is also about, this comes to close to mindfulness, but for many children, I know mindfulness is too difficult. Traditional mind, sitting there and trying to be in the here and the now, it's even difficult for me. But activities that make you forget about the outside world, those are important. So this is a time where making free time schedules for children, autistic children, is even more important than in other times, and where we need to find what their flow activities are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same said, for a lot of autistic adults, certainly that we support and speak with through our advice line, about planning, what are you going to, what will you do in the evening? What activities might you do? And, flow activities like doing a jigsaw or, watching a really great film. I thought your idea, and one that I might steal as well, using your idea for Netflix, we'll choose a category and then somebody else can choose which number, and that's the film we'll watch, kind of thing. And, just finding those activities that just sort of, as you see, take your attention away from the worry, but also acknowledging that you've had your worry, we're worried about that. And I think as well, and we spoke about it as well in the previous chat that you and I had around that sort of control chart, things that you can control, that you can do something about, things that you might need somebody else to support you with, and things that actually nobody can do anything about, and become things that we have to sort of accept in life, if you like.
The thing about the Netflix, I also said that for another reason. Nowadays there's indeed a lot of uncertainties coming to us, and we are kind of learning the wrong things right now, because every new uncertainty is something that is linked to disease and death. So we have to be very careful that we are not retraining our brains now in terms of not knowing what is coming is bad. So therefore, we need to, the Netflix idea, or the idea about if you want to buy yogurt, take the fifth yogurt from the fourth shelf on the left, so that you train your brain that not knowing something and being surprised with what you end up with can also be nice. And maybe you will buy a yogurt that is not very tasteful, or maybe your Netflix movie that somebody else chose is not your cup of tea. But I'm sure you will do discoveries that you said, you know what, if we would only do those things that we can control, there would be no thrill anymore in life. There would be no adventure anymore. Why do people go to a country they've never been before? That's also, the brain also needs some uncertainty in order to keep itself busy. But now we're at risk to link the uncertainty only to this COVID thing and the pandemic and the disease. I think we need, so here is a tip again for parents and teachers. What if we now use surprises, but try to build in pleasant surprises, and even maybe go a step further, that a child surprises a sibling or its teacher. So that, for instance, the child decides, we're going to have a group talk now about holidays, and one of the children decides who can start. Or you just draw a name. In that way, we teach these children and also ourselves, we don't always have predictability, but sometimes unpredictability can be nice as well. So it can be fun, and try to involve fun surprises, like the Netflix. That could be a fun surprise, in order to avoid that, especially with autistic brains who have the tendency to be rather straightforward and absolute. So there's a risk now that they learn that not knowing the future is always bad. Sometimes you better not know about the future as well.
Yeah, because sometimes, particularly if you're not able to fully have all pieces, to predict the future with, then your brain tends to sort of fill in the blanks a little bit, doesn't it? And then you end up maybe not quite.
Yeah, and typical for the brain is that we then, we then often make a mountain of a molehill. We make things bigger than they are, or we have these worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
But even then, that's what you can do with children as well. If they say, but what if somebody gets sick in the classroom? Well, the what ifs, there's always something that can be done.
Yes.
And with some kids, it's enough then to say, if somebody gets sick, you be sure that the principal of the school is a wise woman or a wise man, and he or she will take the right measures to make sure that all the other kids are safe. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. What if? Yeah, but what if and some children can even go further. Let them go further. Don't say, yeah, but that's enough. Yeah, but what if 2 children become sick? Well, then, and eventually, what if all the teachers die in the school? That's the worst case scenario. They all get infected, they all die. Well, then there will still be people who will take care of children, and they won't be teachers, but maybe other people will do. Parents we will take care of you then, and maybe, well, we did it during lockdown, we will become your teacher then. And it's going to be not easy to organize, but somebody will take care of you. So even, the what ifs, sometimes you need to challenge, and even if you make it very bad and you see there will still be a solution for that, I wouldn't do that with kids who are very anxious from nature, because then you make it bigger.
Yeah.
The ones who want, you have these kids, autistic children also, who are these little scientists and who want to, go along the rules all the time. Well, let them go all the way and say, and still then we're gonna find the solution. Can you think of anything more else that is worse? No. Okay, you see, we have now the worst case scenario and we still have a solution.
The solution. I think that is, it's a, parents watching this afternoon, and indeed parents that may watch, later on, your children better than anybody out there. You know what's right for your child, and hopefully some of the discussions that we've been having over the last weeks and months, there'll be parts that won't work for you as a family or for your child, but hopefully there'll be parts that do work, and you can piece together your own kind of plan, if you like. I just want to sort of touch on a few of the comments that we've been receiving whilst we've been sort of chatting away here. I've had one here from Mario saying, my daughter had a problem going to school after lockdown because the routine was so established at home. But even so, after a week in school, she's settled back in and she's happy. She needs school like a house routine. So it's like what Mario's saying there is, you have routines and you need to give time to sort of slot back into your new routine and learn about the changes that are maybe going to happen in there. And then we've had Margaret here as well saying her 6-year-old grandson had a hard time coping during lockdown. It didn't help that he didn't have a garden, and he didn't like anybody sort of walking behind him before lockdown. And it's worse now, but he's happy going back to school, back into that routine. Sort of now that he's back there. Margaret and Peter may have something to add around, people walking behind your grandson there. If you'd like to sort of chat through that in a little bit more detail with one of our advisors, please do contact the advice line, and they can have a chat through that with you, because we have experience of a similar situation with another family. So our advisors would be more than happy to chat through with you about that there. And I think Jens here really sort of sums it up, saying the restart is going to take some time for parents. The routines have not been adopted in a week, and it will take some time. It will take months to go back to and Jens calls it the normal, but whatever that scenario might look like for that one there. And I've just sort of to come to the end of the comments that we've had so far. Craig here is saying, my son went back to school just fine, but this week has been really upset. I think it's due to his routine at home for so long, and this coming as a big change, and the thought of not being at home every day. Do you have any tips to help sort of support and relieve his anxiety or upset around these sort of flexing routines that he's now?
Yeah, I think, again, first of all, do acknowledge that it will take some time for kids to develop the new routine of now having school and home again. That will take time. For some, it takes even more time. What is important is, again, to stress that there are things that you have in control, but also, and you mentioned family life and doing things that are fun together at home. Because some kids might think, okay, we had so many nice family activities during the lockdown, because, well, that's one of the positive things about the lockdown, that we certainly were more together and we could do things together. And many parents did a wonderful job, a tough job, but a wonderful job keeping their kids busy. And that's actually, at home is less stressful for most children, for most of us, than being at work or at school. So what is important here is saying, okay, it's new out there and it's gonna take time, but you will get there. So try to reassure your child that it will come, but it will take time. The other thing is, make sure that when he comes home from school, that there's always a transition activity that gives him both the time to complain about how bad school is now and how different it is, but also to make the transition to a well-known routine activity at home. And it's better to have the same routine every day when he comes home, because that helps him to make the transition, and give him time to well, take all the stress that he brings with him from school, put it aside, literally as in the box, and then do something that is lovely as a family together, whatever that is, and then go back to business again of family life, because there's things that have to be done at home as well. And that is important, that there is a moment of predictability, and a moment that is a positive moment, but reassured that it's best, that schools are reopened. That's actually a very good thing, because being, it was nice at home with the family, but imagine you have to do this for the rest of your life.
We all need time apart.
Okay, so, but yeah, give a predictable routine, that where he can put the stress away from school and say, okay, we're back home now.
Yeah. And I think as well, for some children, indeed, and for some, adults, sort of, to use a phrase, really sort of processing or adjusting to the change can sometimes take a little bit of time, can't it, for some individuals, that although a change might have happened, a week ago, it might take some time just for that to sort of process, and for your
Yes.
child or for the
Yeah.
individual.
Well,
Change,
we do know that the human brain needs between 30 and 90 days to get adapted to something new. The first time I saw a person wearing a face covering, that was so strange. And now sometimes I say, oh, look, there's somebody without a face mask. So that means that my brain got adapted to seeing pictures of people wearing face masks. Okay, I know there's this problem with exemptions for children. There's problem with people not following the rules. I know that, but it would be strange now to see all people without face masks. That would be, imagine that you come suddenly in a school or a supermarket and nobody's wearing a face mask. You would be surprised now. So that means your brain is getting adapted, but it took us, well, a couple of months, and it will even take us even longer time. But I was in Singapore last year in June, and there I was surprised to see people shopping with a face mask. I said, what? But it's normal over there already for more than a year, and kids are taking it in as well. That's how it is. That's how it is.
Yeah, it's getting used to giving ourselves the time and the space, and being kind to ourselves in that process as well, that it might take some time, as you say. I think that's really fascinating. It can take up to 90 days for a change to sort of process itself in our brains. So some really, really interesting things that we've covered today. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us again.
You're welcome.
Sure. Craig, who asked the question regarding his son, has sent us a big thumbs up. So thank you so much, everybody that's joined us this afternoon. Please do feel free to continue to post questions, even if you're also watching this event after the live event. Our team will pick them up and feed them either back to Peter or through our advice line team. And just once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Peter.
It's a big pleasure always.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.